What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. Number 10, I have the Oklahoma City Thunder. So my Thunder pessimism, and I've said this a million times, and I have to say it as a disclaimer just because of the way that sometimes people act, the way that the internet is. Yes. I love everything about this Thunder team. I love Shai. I've been super high on him for a long time. Jalen Williams, was talking about him this morning. He had a couple of nasty step back threes the other night against God, who was it? I can't even remember. But I was watching him. You know he's actually been the second best pull-up jump shooter in the league this year. like minimum 200 attempts. There's like 44 guys. James Harden's number 1. Jalen Williams is number 2. He's getting like 1.18 points per pull-up jump shot. It's completely outrageous. And he's like just got that in combination with real downhill force. I love Chet. I love not just how good he is now, but what his potential is and what his demeanor is like and his competitiveness. Lou Dort's one of my favorite 3-and-D players in the league. Huge Thunder fan. This is just simply based on my overarching basketball opinions, or philosophies, whatever you want to call it. In my opinion, if you are small and young, you're not going to win in the late phases of the NBA playoffs. Specifically, last year's conference finalists, the final 4 teams, all 4 were top 11 in defensive rebounding. In 2022, the Mavs, Warriors, and Heat were all top 10. The Celtics were 15th. 2021, all 4 conference finalists were all in the top 11 in defensive rebounding percentage. I think a big part of it is when you get into that phase, kind of like we saw in the Cavs-Knicks series last year, those physical advantages actually just get overemphasized when you get to that point. There's a reason why no rebounds, no rings is a saying. It's actually a big version of why I have some skepticism surrounding the Clippers. In my opinion, the Clippers are just a better version of the Thunder. I know they don't play schematically the exact same way, but in terms of the way that they're constructed as like these kind of two-way perimeter players, I just think Kawhi and Paul George are better versions of that than Shai and Jalen are, especially at this phase in their careers. So like, I really like Oklahoma City. I would be barring some sort of weird thing where like Shai decides he doesn't want to be in the Thunder anymore and demands a trade. I don't think that the Thunder are going to go through this era without winning a title. I think they're going to. I think they're too good not to. I just, to me, in a field this stacked, I would just be so surprised if this super young, super small team somehow ended up with the trophy at the end of the day. Tell me why I'm wrong, Sam.
Okay, so look, I say this as somebody who had the Thunder at like 7 or 8 or something like that, right? So I am not drastically higher on the Thunder than where you are for this season's playoffs. The highest I think you can reasonably get them right now is probably 5th or so. I think they are a total ass-kicking team on offense. And on defense, they bring some real schematic point of attack issues that cause all sorts of problems in terms of half court execution. On top of that, they are the best transition team in the NBA. Now, I typically don't love transition basketball in the playoffs. I think it is much more difficult to execute than just being an elite level half court execution offense. Having said that, with the Thunder, where the transition adeptness helps is if you decide that you want to try and attack the offensive glass against the Thunder and you want to go for that, they're going to kill you in transition, even in the playoffs. Like if you decide, hey, we're the Lakers, we want to crash with AD, we want to crash with really just AD, I guess LeBron as well would be your idea. If I'm the Thunder, I'm saying be my guest. We're still going to get probably 65% of those. Like even if we're the worst defensive rebounding team in the league, we'll even if we like go even worse than the worst defensive rebounding team in the league and we get 65% of the offensive or the defensive rebounds and you're crashing multiple guys, we're going to beat you in transition more than you're going to beat us on the offensive glass. So I would invite that if I'm them. Now, the question with the Lakers, the question with teams that like can really get downhill rim pressure is, what will Chet look like in the playoffs? I think Chet is an outstanding competitor. I think Chet is somebody whose mentality is going to translate exceedingly well toward the playoffs. I worry a little bit in terms of foul trouble in the playoffs for Chet. If he gets into foul trouble, what is their combo breaker? What is their counter? They don't really have one? Question mark. It's going to be entirely reliant on Chet being able to play 35 minutes a night in the playoffs. And I say that thinking Chet is their third best player, but he is probably their second most important player in terms of playoff success behind Shai. Now, part of my Thunder optimism compared to your being a Thunder hater, which is what I will be referring to you as from now on, Jason. I think Shai is an absolute dude. And I think he is going to be able to wreak havoc on opposing teams. And in part, the reason for that is you have to guard them now 5 out. The big underrated unsung trade addition that a team made at the deadline, if he can be healthy, is Gordon Hayward. Because previously what teams have done to kind of gum up the works for Oklahoma City on offense is play your center on Josh Giddey and then be able to try and filter Shai toward the help in the middle and then leave Josh Giddey literally wide open from 3. That's the way that teams have had success against them this season. With Gordon Hayward, you cannot do that. He will kill you from 3. He will beat you as a shooter from distance, and he's bigger than Isaiah Joe, which was their other combo breaker, counter, whatever you want to call it. Isaiah, I think, is a smart defender, but he's somebody that you can attack a little bit too often on defense. With Hayward, I think that you're not going to be able to attack him as much, which leads to a circumstance where they can play genuine 5-out offense, force all sorts of issues as you're trying to stay in front of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is the best paint touch guy in the NBA right now. I think you would probably agree with that.
He can beat people off the dribble.
He can beat anybody in the NBA off the dribble. Then on top of it, you have Jalen Williams, who I think is still underrated league-wide. I don't think people understand what Oklahoma City has in Jalen Williams. This is not like your run-of-the-mill like potential second star at some point. He is going to be an all-NBA player.
You were the one who gave me the Jimmy Butler comp, right? It was you that gave me that, right?
Yes.
Love that.
That is literally what I'm going to next. Yeah. He is like Jimmy Butler for this coming era. He is fucking huge. He is physical. He's 6'6" with a 7'2" wingspan. The biggest thing though is he's a genuine 3-level scorer. How many teams right now can you point to that have 2 legitimate elite? And I would say Jalen isn't, maybe not like elite of the elite, but he's damn close. 3-level scorers right now. I would not say Giannis is a 3-level scorer. I would not say Anthony Davis is a 3-level scorer. I would say that the Nuggets certainly have multiple 3-level scorers. I would say the Clippers have 3-level scorers.
But even then, Kawhi and Paul George don't get to the rim the way that Shai and Jalen do.
100%. That ability to constantly pressure the defense from multiple angles, I think, is enormous. You can constantly pressure the defense from multiple angles on the court from all 3 levels while having 3 other additional guys on the court that are spacing the court. I think they're actually an impossible guard in the playoffs if they don't have to play Josh Giddey.
It's totally reasonable. I loved the Gordon Hayward edition. If for nothing else, I'm just excited to watch Gordon Hayward play in big playoff games. I don't know about you, but like I feel like we haven't gotten nearly enough of that, especially after what he was like in college. Specifically with Shai, you and I had an argument on the phone the other day, and I wanted to kind of get that on the record here. So basically, what I said to Sam on the phone And
you think he's James
no,
Harden
no, no.
is where your take is.
So I use James Harden as a comp to make an example about playoff defense, but I'll accept it. So basically, this is what I said to Sam. For the record, I do not think Shai is going to be James Harden. But one of the things that happened to James Harden is he was a guy that had the basketball in his hands a lot and did a lot of attacking, specifically from the same angles on the floor, out of ball screens and in isolation. And one of the things I noticed with James Harden is he was a guy that was gifted at beating people off the dribble, but was not a supreme athlete at his position, which is what I would describe Shai. Shai, to me, is a very good athlete, but he is not Anthony Edwards. Okay, he doesn't bring like incredible force to the position. He is shifty with the way that he beats people off the dribble. Amazing with change of pace and footwork and all the like kind of weird. He's got kind of like a weird old fashioned game in a lot of ways with his ability to beat people off the dribble with hesitations and in and outs. And he's really good at protecting the basketball while making aggressive moves. But what would happen with James Harden is by game 5, by game 6, by game 7 of a series, an elite perimeter defender would see his dribble package and see his hesitation moves dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of times, and he just wouldn't be able to get as much separation as the series progressed. All I'm saying is I am curious to see Shai in his first playoff series as a number one option, simply because he is a guy that relies a lot on change of pace, hesitation, type of stuff to beat people off the dribble. I'm curious to see if we see an elite perimeter defender not solve him, but figure out a way to kind of slow him down a little bit. I'm just curious to see it. I personally think that Shai will eventually solve that himself in his career, even if he does encounter that problem. I just think he's way better than I think he will be way better than James Harden ever was. But I just think, and that almost feels mean to say with how good James Harden was at his prime, but I want to say I believe in Shai long term. I'm just curious to see if there will be an adjustment period with him as it pertains to playoff basketball.
Here's my counter to that. James Harden never had a mid-range game that was nearly the level that Shai's mid-range game is. Shai is shooting something like 52 to 53%. From between 10 and 23 feet right now. So even if you do stay in front of him, where Harden struggled was deciding, okay, I'm just going to step back into the mid-range and find a way into that shot. He had to get all the way to the rim. He had to rely on fouls, right? Shai has the body mechanics and that shiftiness to be able to stop and pop in the mid-range and be able to just shoot over the top of the tough. He can create high-ish, not super high, but like high-ish efficiency looks from the mid-range in a way that James Harden really couldn't at the end of the day. And I think that it's much harder to sit on Shai's moves in that way, particularly knowing that with Harden, it was, okay, I either need to sit on the step back or I need to be ready to stop him at the rim, and we need to have second body coming over. With Shai, it's I have to be available for the step back three. I have to be available basically at every single step along the line toward him driving to the rim. I have to be ready that he's going to stop and pop ahead of me. And I think that makes it a lot more difficult to guard him than what it was to guard James in the playoffs at the end of the day, when you had 7 games to adjust, throw different looks at him, throw different counters at him. And on top of it, seriously, like Jalen Williams is waiting on the second side once the defense is bent, and he can score from all 3 levels too. He's a 50, I think he's shooting like 54, 45, 82 or something right now. So like he's a 180 shooter on the other side, just in a different, mechanical way that he's going about it in terms of the numbers. So, man, I think this is a really good team, dude. I think that it really does. I think your points are entirely valid about what do they look like in terms of the physicality. If Chet can't stay on the floor, they have a real chance to lose in the first round. That is a fact of the matter. If he proves that he can stay on the floor, I think they can make the finals. Like, to me, the swing is all him. And I don't know the answer to that yet. And I don't think anybody does, in terms of the way that like his game will be officiated as much as anything. Like, I trust the person, like the human being, to bring it. I'm just really interested to see the way he's officiated in the playoffs.
I'm excited to see what happens. To be clear, I'm rooting for them. This is not a negative like Thunder type of take. It's just I am. I think this can work to my detriment sometimes, but I lean heavily on my basketball philosophies, and they just kind of land into some of those boxes.